Bleacher Report, welcome back to another post game. Lions Bears 52-21. I should have looked before I got on here if that's the most points that we've scored under Dan Campbell, but I think it is. I think it ties. I remember we scored 52 against the Titans, 52-14, but that was much different because that one, I'm not going to say it was expected we scored 52, but it's expected that we dominated that game. This I don't think was, especially after the first week. The noise after the first week was strongly a lot of concern. And I know pregame today we talked about like what we needed, because people were concerned, man, if we drop this one, we got Baltimore next. We can't lose this one. It's a must win. And I wasn't there because it's so early in the season, but you wanted to see explosives. You wanted positives, big positive plays, something that you could grab onto that made you think of this is the Lions team I remember. And today they gave us tons of that. And I don't want to say it was like kind of came out slow, but man, the second half, I mean, this thing it just poured on, and it felt like a dominant Lions win that we remembered when Dan Campbell was here last year or in the year before that, when it would just kind of slowly happen. You get to the point where like this is dominant. There's not much the other team feels like they can do with this. I mean, the Titans game, we won 52-14. I think it was tied at 14. Titans had something rolling, and it was a battle, and all of a sudden it just got out of hand. And this one felt like it really transition into that kind of game right before half and right out of half, right? What they always talk about. And the weird thing is we didn't have possession coming out of second half. Usually you have possession, so you score, you go in, you come out, you 10 points, kind of a swing like that. This was the other way around. We had it right before half. We scored, made it 2 scores. Then we came out of half, got a key 3 and out. Then we, of course, had the one massive play that put us in field goal range. We walk away with 3. Now it's a 17-point game. And then we again do it on defense. A big stop. They're not close enough anywhere near it, seemingly, to I think on that possession, actually, that was the one that was tipped in the air and it was incomplete to Terrion. So that was the huge swing of this game. That was it. And that's what allowed it to get out of hand and turn into what it did. But we're going to walk through the key plays of this one. We're going to walk through some of the play-by-play, talk through it a little bit. Yeah, Dallas and Giants are going at it right now. But we're going to walk through this. Let's start from jump, special teams. Special teams needs attention because last week it was a mess. And this week it started as good as it gets. Jacob Saylor's got the nod again because there's no Sione Vaki. And the very first kick return, he steps out of bounds, picks up the ball. We get it at the 40-yard line. I think that was huge because last week it felt like we were sitting at our own 10-yard line all game long. This went incredibly well to start at our own 40. Felt like it shifted momentum from jump. And then also what we were used to with the Lions, especially when Ben Johnson was here, was scoring that first drive of the game. And that's what they did to get things started. And I loved it because it felt like they came out with a very similar plan to what worked last week in the second half. What worked last week in the second half against Green Bay to find some rhythm was a lot of play action, throwing on first down. We're not even leaning into the run. They kind of just got away from it. Like, we're going to throw it, and that's how we're going to find explosives. And their very first explosive of that game, over 20 yards, was Sam Laporta right out of half, where they hit him on that deep over route. And in this game, it seemed like they took that plan of this is how we're going to approach it to find a rhythm, and they just started with it from jump. They're like, we're going to do the exact same thing. The very first play of the game with that deep over route, they hit St. Brown in the play action, 25 yards off jump. And then right there, they played off of that from the beginning. The second play was another play action. It was a rollout. We end up hitting Sam Laporta for 9 yards. Now it's the 2nd and 1. We can run behind that. We get behind Mahogany. I will also say the offensive line simply did a much better job in this game. The biggest thing for me was I don't know how dominant everybody was consistently, but we clearly didn't have the same amount of negatives that we had last week. There wasn't as many players living in the backfield, and I think we helped out our offensive linemen. I think we helped them. It, of course, helps them when you can go play action to throw the ball. It helps them deal with pass rushing, and it also is a great opportunity when you're not playing behind by 3 scores, and that pass rush doesn't start to heat you up like crazy like it kind of did here to Caleb Williams. But I think we helped them a lot by that approach from jump. And then, of course, we got to that downhill run. And again, another little thing that I loved because last week so much of it was, hey, stretch and outside zone, and these athletes are getting upfield. But the one thing that felt like it had some real legs to it was when we were just going to get downhill, we're going to go dual runs, we're going to double team, we're going to push guys backwards. And it was that simple. And we had a 5-yard run just like that to Jahmyr Gibbs, running behind that heavy downhill look. And then, of course, it sets up the touchdown, which is the toss play. Sam Laporta leads it. We seal off the edge and we're walking into the end zone. And again, just from a big picture outlook, Ben Johnson used to always say this with the Lions offense in the red zone. He said he didn't believe there was a correlation of consistency for red zone scoring. He felt like the only thing that you could point to, because it's all over the place, there's not a great way to find consistency in the red zone outside of you have to be able to run the football. If you can't run the ball, it's really hard in the red zone. And this game, the Lions ran it from jump really well in the red zone, scoring on that lead toss play from Sam Laporta leading the way. 5-yard run, 5-yard run. That's fantastic. Running the football well in the red zone. Again, I think they set it up through the pass. We'll flip it around to their side of the ball defensively because the Bears didn't start out that poorly offensively. I think they had some success offensively. So we'll start there first again. I point out special teams because it was good. It was good from jump. Pat O'Connor, Craig Reynolds both get on the stop. The run defense has now through 2 weeks kind of been the key for the Lions. Is the interior defense fine? Now Swift did find some success in this game. I would say a little bit more than probably what Kelvin Shepard was hoping for. I think he had 12 carries for 63 yards. It's much more efficient, but it's only 12 carries. So that's fine. I mean, that's just a small amount. It kind of points to how the game was going a little bit in this one. But the first play was a cutback run. It was stopped for a minimal gain. Then you had Jack Campbell working out into the flat. He stops the route for a minimal gain. They ended up picking up that big first third down, which was the issue. That's what got us into trouble last week was we couldn't get off the field on third down early. Well, we seemingly settled some of that. Actually, I want to read that because I don't know what we were on third down in this game. But last game, it was 4 for 4 start from Green Bay. Then they went 0 for 6 afterwards. This game on third down, they were 7 for 13. We were 4 for 10. So I guess it's not much better as a whole. Statistically, that's actually pretty darn bad. But I would assume it got a little bit better. They were also 0 for 2 on fourth down. So I guess on have to have it downs, they were still slightly under 50%. We were 5 for 11 on third and fourth down. So I guess we were a touch better in this one. But it started off with giving that up immediately from jump as Terran Arnold got beat. DJ Reed was tackling awesome. I mean, it was great. He was tackled his tail off. Great run support in this game. Sterion was the same way last week, too. That's what we expect out of our DBs, to be really good in those spots. And then we ended up giving up that touchdown. So the second look that we ended up giving up a touchdown. I want to see if that one was on third down as well. That was the play where we ended up bringing 6 on the play. We go to that cover 3 blitz. So it means we only have 2 underneath defenders. And they clear out on the backside, take our defensive back side of the play, and then you got Jack Campbell standing in the middle of zone coverage, having to deal with a crossing route, which he's not going to deal with, especially when there's no help. And then when you blitz 6 and you block 6 and they pick it up cleanly, there's really not a shot there. So from jump, it wasn't great. I want to look at that one. That was a 28-yard pass on a third down and 9. So again, both third downs to get things started were bad. It was basically the same exact start as last week against the Green Bay Packers before they started settling in. So that makes the third down numbers feel a little bit better there. And then I also want to point out Goff's pocket movement, man. I've been seeing it since last year. He actually, and it's not just seeing it, it's also the stats back this up. Goff under pressure last year had better stats than usual. Usually his pressure stats are disgusting. They are horrible. But usually that's the case with every quarterback. So it's like when people throw up the pressure stats, like, I get that, but everybody's pretty bad under pressure. However, it was actually better for him last year. He was weirdly better under pressure last year, and I thought it's because he was moving better, and he was grading out better there. And I think so far this year we've seen that. Even this drive, the second drive where we stopped on downs, he was moving better, and he gave us a chance. And we're going to talk about a couple of these because, again, think about how the Lions started that second drive. Same exact way. Play action first down. They hit St. Brown on a big over route. So 2 things. Number 1, throwing on first down works, and I thought that always typically makes sense because you get seemingly more simplified looks from your opponent when you can throw the ball on first down. It kind of simplifies out all the mess that you're getting in the back end. Also, of course, Bears losing Jalen Johnson was massive. I think that changed the numbers a ton in this game because now they didn't have him, so they already had they were already without their starting slot corner in Kyler Gordon, which is typically a tough matchup for us to deal with. You take out Jalen Johnson. Now they're putting Wright in the game, who I know he had the pick 6, but he didn't play that well last week. Tyreek Stevenson, who already was a matchup advantage for us on paper with a guy like Jameson Williams. And now you had, what is it, McLeod? I'm saying the name wrong. I know his name isn't McLeod, but McLeod is coming to mind. That's not the name. I'll figure it out. Their slot corner. So they were beat up at corner. That hurt them. But you started off the same way there. Then you had the deep shot play. So after picking up the big first down, the next play is another play action. It's the shot play to J-Mo. It had a chance. Missed him by a little bit deep. Missed him by a touch deep on that one. Maybe it should have been a little flag. I don't know. Then you get the 4-yard run, and you're pulling it. You're getting the toss play. You're getting outside a little bit. But again, you're running on second down. And I want to focus on that because I'm not going to say I remember what they were doing defensively on second down because I don't. But I do remember when tracking the plays for that first game, I thought run the ball on second down. And I said that because they played a lot more man coverage on second down. And typically teams run better against man coverage because you don't have eyes. There's no eyes in the backfield. So as long as your front 5 blocks well, you typically have success in those spots. And also they're playing a lot of 2-man coverage on second down and long, specifically a lot of 2-deep coverage. So you're pulling somebody out of the box already. Now, we didn't have Justin Jefferson, so maybe they weren't playing that exactly. But I can just tell you that coming in, that was the game plan in my eyes, was run the ball on second down. So they run on second down 4 yards, and then they have that broken play on third down, which ends up being an incomplete pass to Laporta. It may have been a little bit of a missed throw by Jared Goff, but it was a broken play. He ended up creating a little bit, gave us an opportunity, and then it was broken up to Sam Laporta. And I think they showed man went to zone. That's the area we didn't want to live in anyway. We were still 5 of 11 on third and fourth down. That's never the area to live in, is third and 4+, and especially against Chicago because I don't think they're the best pass rushing front, but they still have some guys. Montez Sweat, Deo's a good player, though. By the way, Deo was silent today. I couldn't tell you a play that Deo made today, which is great. Maybe he made one. Maybe I think there's something that he did today. I don't remember what it was. That's great. He was awesome last week against Minnesota. Didn't notice him at all in this game. But that's typically a spot you don't want to live in. And again, Chicago specifically, that's not the spot because that's where they were very creative in terms of what looks they were going to give you. And maybe we didn't have the right look in that spot. So then we get back to it defensively after that stop, and they run that fake little reverse. That fake little reverse with Caleb wrapping around and Swift keeps it. And they threw that at us a couple times. Both times it was very minimal gains. So I think they were trying to set something potentially up, maybe get a look off of that. Never felt like they could really get to it because they found themselves in such a big hole that it kind of wasn't a thing anymore. But they were setting it up, but at least we handled it well for what the early looks were, which is just Swift running towards the outside. He got a yard there. Then again, no gain on the next play. Davenport got in on the stop. Roy Lopez getting on the stop. Now it's 3rd down and long. Terrion Arnold's able to get off the field. And I point this play out because they ran that like out route to Terrion on the sideline, and he shut it down, and there was nothing after the catch. And I mean, they picked up a good gain, but it was short of the first. I point this play out because against Minnesota, we saw this for Ben Johnson, is that if they knew you were in man, he does a lot of rubs, stacks, switch releases. So a lot of times he's going to create enough leverage to get the completion. But the key becomes run after catch because you have to get something after the catch. But when it's that far of a distance, all of a sudden you're in a good spot. We saw it for Minnesota. The first time they gave up the first down, they had Jeff Okudah matched up with Zacchaeus, and that gave up the first. But the second time around, they ended up getting the stop, and it's because it was a longer 3rd down situation. So even though they were in man and they had the switch and they were able to get the completion, it was blown up on contact. So there was still nothing after the catch. And I think that's what's key about this is it's 3rd and long enough where it's like, even though you gave it the catch, you're not giving up the yards after catch and you're still getting off the field because of what you did on 1st and 2nd down. It always seems to come back. Okay, it is McLeod. It is Nick McLeod. I didn't think it was McLeod. It just didn't sound right. It didn't sound right saying that. I'm glad you said it because he was with the Giants, right? And I liked him with the Giants. McLeod, something sounded off there, but I guess it was right. Anyways, to all the no, that's real. That's real. Like I never really bring that energy. You know what I mean? Because ever since Dan's gone here, I don't think that's ever been the Lions. Like there's no reason for me not to be super optimistic in the Lions since Dan Campbell's been here. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy not to be super optimistic since Dan's been here because he's just this team's always bounced back under Dan since he's been here. And they've just gotten it done, man. They've shown they're capable of this stuff. So I understood that week 1 led to some concern because there was some massive changes. And I think it was rightfully so because the offensive line was pretty messy in that game and Green Bay played pretty well. I thought we'd beat Green Bay in that game. But, you expected kind of a slow start. But this was as good as it. This is exactly what the fans needed to be fired up about next week. This is exactly what everybody needed out there. All right, we'll go back to it offensively. And again, we score on this drive. Now we're starting with the run. It gets you 2.5 yards on 1st down. Then he gets sacked. And this was the one that I think it was KO'd came in. We went jumbo package. KO'd got beat. We get a sack there. But luckily, it was offsetting penalties. So it reset the down. It was still 2nd and long. And again, now here's where we pick up a big shot play. We hit Khalif Raymond. And this was, honestly, I thought this was throw of the year so far from Goff. I mean, from what I remember correctly, it was like behind the linebacker, in front of the safety. It was 22 yards. And he kind of stepped up and it was weird. It was a weird looking pass, but he hits Khalif on this big play. And that's how, and maybe it wasn't 22 yards. Maybe it was 14. I have 22 written down, but I'm pretty sure he only had 14 receiving yards. So me writing 22 doesn't make any sense. Let me double check that. There's something's off there. There's no way that doesn't make any sense. It was probably 14. It was probably 14. I wrote 22. Usually my yards are way off. That's normal. I'm usually way off with my yards. Let me see here. 14 yards. Yeah, it was a 14-yard catch. I don't know why I put 22. Anyway, 22 sounds better. Sounds a lot better. It's 14, though. And then we end up hitting St. Brown in the play-action play. That puts us at the 1-yard line, and then we punch it in. So, again, 32-yard pass on 1st down. Our explosives were 1st down passing in this game. We hit St. Brown in the deep middle shot, put us at the 1-yard line, and then Montgomery punched it in. So, again, the 1st down passing was the difference this week. That's what changed things. We threw the ball on 1st down. It worked last week and carried it over to this week. We have to give John Morton credit for that. He found a recipe that worked. He made adjustments last week. I understand we didn't finish in the red zone. Obviously, we ran better this week, which changed everything. And to be fair, we should have done that. Like, there's no doubt that on paper, you looked at our O-line and their D-line, and you said the advantage is our O-line. There's no doubt. Even though as bad as it was last week, this is not the same defensive front. They're not as athletic up front. We should be better rushing the football in this game. I think Grady Jarrett was active, if I remember correctly. So there's no reason that the Lions weren't better, but they were much better, seemingly in this one. Davenport status, I don't know. I don't know what his status is. I know that he was out for the game, and it didn't look great. He had kind of that shoulder that was banged up. I don't know. I don't know what it is for Davenport. I'm hoping it's not serious. That's the only hope that I have. I know he's a warrior. We saw that last year. He's going to play through something. He'll try to. It's just if it's too significant, obviously, then it doesn't matter. But he did get a sack on that play, which was nice. And that was a crucial sack for us. Muhammad did his thing. When he stepped in. So I think they'll be comfortable with that. And they've constantly been making Tyrus Wheat and Tyler Lacey, 2 guys that they picked up through the waiver wire, healthy scratches. So they're going to have bodies if they have to go that direction. Also, we got to see Mekhi Wingo for the first time this year. I'll be honest, I don't really remember much of him doing anything, but I know that he was out there and he has the flexibility to play DN. So at very least, we got him back. So they're going to have numbers if they don't have Marcus next week. I'm just hoping it's not that serious. That's all. That's the only thing I'm at here. Just hopefully it's not serious. If he missed a couple weeks, so be it. We just need him for the long run. That's where we're at now. We need him for the long stretch when it comes to playoff time, and we need somebody that can give us some juice. We're not having to look in free agency and pick up these 40-year-old veterans. We need someone like that. So hopefully he's available for that time. And then the defense was clutch. And I got to be honest, man, 2 weeks in of Calvin Shepard's defense, I think it's very positive. I think it's really positive. And the big thing, I guess he said that they were going to get turnovers this week, and he did that. And this is the first time we got that. They went the bubble play, picked up 5 yards. Then we end up blitzing. They get around Derek Barnes from the outside. That's one thing. We were failing to set the edge multiple times. I don't know if Ben Johnson had our training camp film or what the heck that was. But that happened a lot. That was like the one issue in training camp was, for whatever reason, we could not set an edge to save our lives. I mean, we couldn't. Every time teams would go outside, they would, and Chicago was doing it with the 2-pull, and we couldn't set an edge, and they kept wrapping around us, and it was like, oh, big game there. He must have had that training camp footage because that's where they had their success offensively. Then you had the incomplete shot play. Kirby was doing his thing, working over top, then hit the 11-yard play to Terran Arnold in the out route. But it was the forced fumble that was the difference. And again, a 3-yard play on first down, which I'm looking at this, man. If it's that limited on first down, you're going to be successful. And the Lions linebackers have played well through 2 weeks in terms of pass coverage. Whenever they've kept things in front of them underneath, they've done a really good job by these linebackers, man. Wrapping up, making plays. Jack Campbell did it from jump. Alex did it there on a check down, a 3-yard gain. They've been very good. The pass rush started to heat up. And again, there's always that marriage between you have to have a quarterback hold the ball beyond one read. If he's holding it to one read, it's going to be really hard for your pass rush to feel impactful. So you have to have that. So when Terrian gets beat on an 11-yard play on a quick out route, there's not a lot that comes into that is you're going to notice the pass rush very much, unless it's a complete, like, hey, nobody blocked that guy. But when first down becomes a 3-yard check down, all of a sudden you're going to start to feel that presence. And they went to that like toss play. Branch forces the fumble. Lions get off the field. That's the first turnover. Branch actually forced another fumble, and then they forced the third fumble on the same guy a little bit later. We just didn't recover it. Branch was all over the place. I love having Brian Branch on this football team. I hope he's okay. That's a huge injury update that we're going to have to wait for. How serious is it with Brian Branch? He shouldn't have been out there at that point in time in the game. Christian Mahogany also got banged up. So how serious is that? Because right now we don't have Miles Frazier to go to. So maybe you might have to go to a guy like Tristan Colon or something like that, which I'd be comfortable with. But hopefully that's not serious either. Those are the 2 updates that we're going to have to kind of sit back and wait for. But Brian Branch is a big one. This guy is a complete game changer. I hope it's not that serious. I hope it's not. He also forced an interception, but they threw a whack flag on him, so that came back too. Offense gets back out there, and this drive stalled. This is not the time to stall after what the defense did. It gave us good field position. We had the 1-yard run, which, again, man, first down. We threw a lot better on first down seemingly than we ran the ball. 1-yard run. Decker was creating movement, but Gibbs had nowhere to go. Then you take that shot, and actually this was the shot they took to JMO, which was missed. This was the one that was a little bit missed on the play. The first shot play that I read this wrong. The first shot play to JMO was the one where I don't know where Goff was throwing it. I love to see that again. He threw it at the ground 10 yards short of JMO. I don't know what that was. I don't know if there was some sort of miscommunication or it was just a disaster of a throw, but this is the one that he missed over top by a foot or two. And that would have been massive. That was going to break the game open right there, but it's incomplete. And then it sets you up for that 3rd down and 9. And that's where we hit that little angle route to St. Brown. And it's well short of the first on 3rd and 9. We get 5 yards and we're punting away. So shout out to the defense though, because for that to be the case, for your defense to get that forced fumble, your offense does nothing with it. So you're just holding a 1-score lead. You have to give it back. And then your defense gets immediately off the field in 4 plays. They had the jet sweep on first down, which was a positive, 9 yards on first down. And then they stuffed them. And the expectation for me was, again, coming into this game, just looking at what they did against Minnesota, they were going to run the ball on 2nd down. That's what they showed. They in that game, they started to run it on first down as the game got a little later on because their drop back passing attack became horrible. And that was the big take. The main keys for Chicago that was noticeable is when Caleb Williams was throwing on time through those play action sets and he was firing it to one read, he was really good and he made some awesome passes. When he started to have to go drop back passing, his accuracy kind of fell out the window. And he had to make decisions. He had to deal with any kind of pressure, even if it wasn't significant. Even if you just moved him a little bit, he wouldn't step into throws. He was missing guys by a mile. I think we saw some of that. Remember, he missed a slant. He threw it behind his guy by 4 yards. What was that? He started doing that. And then the other key was 2nd down. They were going to run the ball on 2nd down. And think about this sequence for the defense. Tyleik Williams on 2nd down, though this was a pass. Tips it at the line of scrimmage. Now it's 3rd and 1. 3rd and 1, they go quarterback sneak. He gets half a yard. 4th and inches, they do another quarterback sneak, and Tyleik stuffs it. Or maybe it was DJ Reader. But Tyleik gets a tip. DJ Reader stuffs it. that feels like the strength right now of this team on the defensive line is clearly the interior. Like, this should be a really good defensive line on paper. Think about when Ali McNeil gets back into this. Right now, they're kind of using Wingo for some juice. Then on third down, they'll kind of put Muhammad in there to go over the center. But think about when Aleem gets back, and they don't have to do that anymore, and he's just making pressure on his own. That's going to change things like crazy. But they definitely have the run defense there. And, man, they lived up to that name. They lived up to, hey, you got Joe Tooney, you got Drew Dahlman, and you have Jonah Jackson on the other side. These are two big investments with Jonah Jackson and Drew Dahlman and Joe Tooney. Really three big investments there. And the Lions handled their own in the most crucial spot, got us off the field, great field position. And again, offensively, we miss a field goal. So now there's a chance to go up 10. We missed a field goal. We do nothing on that possession, which is crazy to think we went 14, 14, 10, 14. We had two possessions that looked like this, which is nuts. A negative 2-yard screen, which felt like it had an opportunity. Tyreek made a great play. Then we had a 2-yard run, which got us back to our original spot. And then on 3rd and 10, St. Brown drops a pass. Like, man, you left so many opportunities out there. Hit him right in the shoulder, missed that pass. And then you kick it, a very makeable field goal for Jake Bates. He misses the field goal. Now, all of a sudden, it's still only a 1-score lead. Your defense has done a great 2 possessions in a row, still only a 2-score lead. And then again, look at your defense. Hey, defense deserves the MVP. I didn't realize how good they were until I'm reading this back. The next possession after this. So this would be good field position for their offense. On first down, they do that dang 2-pole thing. They get outside on Alex. They pick up 7 yards. Then they run that quick curl route on Terran Arnold, and Cole Kmet beats him. So now they're off to the races. But then Aiden Hutchinson draws a holding penalty. Now they're backed up. 4 yards on the next play, which Kirby steps down. He makes the run stop on that zone read. Then Brian Branch forces a fumble on the drag route twice. They call a face mask offensively. Now they're backed up by a mile. And then all of a sudden, Kirby picks it off, where he just kind of throws it straight up in the air. That defense was clutch, and it was actually the defensive front that came through and started to back them up, which is fantastic. And then that's finally where our offense kind of put it together. And this is where they got rolling. And I would say from here on is where it was kind of over, because they started to find that rhythm, and then they scored before halftime to make it 2 scores again. And then it was pretty much over from there. But, man, clutch defensively. And I think this is the exact example of when they say, like, one side picking the other side up. When you think about how much they're stalling here offensively for back-to-back drives in good spots, and the defense to just hold them from scoring, that's a perfect example. And then the roles got reversed here, because we went down and scored, then they allowed a touchdown, and then we came back and scored before half, and we reversed those roles. We picked our defense up, and we allowed it to be a 2-score lead going into half, because this next touchdown drive was Dave Montgomery leading the way, a swing pass, a cutback run for a few yards. St. Brown at running back. I love this from John Morton. I thought that this was truly a decision that was being made because the Lions didn't feel like they had enough weapons. Like, I thought when they started, they were doing this when John Morton was first here in 2022. Because I think they were doing it in 2021 as well. But they were putting St. Brown at running back and, like, handing it to him. Because I remember it against Baltimore. And I thought at that time it was because they were like, hey, we don't have any weapons. St. Brown kind of is the only guy. So we're going to give him the ball any way possible. Whatever's easiest, get him the football. But now it's back. And now I just think that this was a John Morton thing, where it's like, I like giving the ball to that guy. So we're going to try to do that. And they did it again today, which is something we haven't seen in 2 years. I don't think we've seen it maybe but one time, maybe in 2 years with Ben Johnson, and now it's back. And it picked up a first down. And hey, this is why we got to give John Morton credit, because we got to be honest, he got in his bag here a little bit. This is when John Morton started to take a dive into the creativity, because he started to pull out everything he had to get this offense back in rhythm. Right, we saw the 2-yard run by Montgomery, but it was wild looking. I mean, they had Tesla out there. They had St. Brown lined up at fullback. We're like, what the heck is this? They gave it to Monty. It looked like it was going to break for a big game, and it didn't. And then on third down, he's like, I'm going to put St. Brown at running back, and I'm going to hand it to him. And that picked up the first down on 3rd and medium, which obviously makes it very easy on Goff. He doesn't really have to do anything there. Then you run a reverse play for 9 yards for Khalif Raymond. Laporta's blocking 2 dudes. That picks up nearly a first down. Then you got Tesla out there to block. That picks up 9 yards. And from there on, like, pulling themselves out of being stagnant offensively was John Morton. And that led to Dave Montgomery really taking over 9 yards, 18 yards, Gibbs 11 yards on the misdirection, and then the touchdown, which was completely set up by the fact that you could run the red zone. Your ability to run in the red zone set up the 2 touchdown passes that they had into the flat. That was completely set up by what they were able to do by running into the red zone. And both St. Brown's touchdowns and Brock Wright's touchdown was the exact same similar look, where it's that fast motion, the play fake, he leaks out into the flat, and he just dumped it over top. We did that same thing twice with Saint at the end and with Brock the first time around. It was completely set up by your ability to run the ball. But I give John Morton complete credit for getting us out of stalling out offensively by saying, I gotta do something here. We got to get creative. We got to mix something up. And he mixed it up. Give him credit, because he found a way to do it, and he found a way to make it successful. And that's when the defense ended up giving up the touchdown. The defense ended up giving up the touchdown here is when, they kind of got us in a bad spot where Brian Branch had to dive down on the quarterback and there was nobody to pick up. I think it was the tight end on the play. So he kind of just walked in the end zone. I thought maybe Kirby should have picked that up. But that's when the defense ended up kind of letting us down a little bit when we got that 2-score lead. And it was fine, right? They gave this up. They gave up that big in breaker for 21 yards. DJ Reed got beat on the big play action set. Sometimes you just get beat one-on-one, right? Brian Branch gets beat one-on-one for 11 yards. You want to live with these things typically. You like your matchups. You like the guys that you invested in. But sometimes you get beat. The 7-yard check down. You end up getting your run stopped, and the quarterback takes off for 8 yards. And it was like, hey, the first time he took off in the game. So sometimes you just get beat. And most of that drive was one-on-one. We just lost. And then that's when our offense did what they had to do to make it a 2-score game. And I can kind of leave it right here after I go through this drive, because that essentially it basically ended the game after what we talked about happened coming out of half, because the offense 1-score game now, and they're able to stretch it back out through half, which changed the game completely. The key plays there would have been, first off, you get Gibbs kind of going on the angle route. That's kind of a drive starter. And then you hit Laporta on a broken play. Goff's moving around, finds Laporta, picks up a big chunk. Now we got a first down. Then he hits St. Brown. You just hand it off to St. Brown again. That picks up a nice gain. Now you're calling your timeout. And then you hit the hitch for Sam Laporta. And these are just, kind of dicing up that zone defense that's sitting back a little bit. We did the rollout to Gibbs. That was an awesome play call by John Morton. Fantastic play call. A 4-yard pickup for Gibbs. It was a 3rd down and 1. It's like, what are we going to do here? We have a timeout. Do we call the timeout? Can he run the football? He goes single back and he runs the rollout and he flips it out to Gibbs, and Gibbs gets 4 yards. Plus he gets out of bounds, saves your timeout, which allows you, I believe he saved his timeout there. Yeah, no, he used the timeout before, so he didn't have the timeout. So that play was crucial because he got out of bounds, because it was going to be about spiking the ball. But because you saved not having to spike the ball, now you can go up and run the Tesla fade, which was play of the game. I already think I called it already a play of the game. Well, forget it. We have 2 plays of the game. This was it. This was the second play of the game. Tesla, 29 yards, fade on, I think it was Tyreek Stevenson, one-handed. You could see the safety roll down, and you knew, like, okay, that's coming. And it was a beautiful ball. It was an amazing catch. And he's somehow inbounds, and the line's like, no, get back on the field. We got enough time for this. And instead of spiking it, they immediately get up there and run a play. They had time because they're reviewing it and stuff to do that, and they run off the clock, which is dumb, but they run off the clock anyway. And instead of spiking it, they go out there and run St. Brown, beating Tyreek Stevenson. And this was an example of, to me, I can give more credit to John Morton because, one, the play wasn't anything special. It was like a little out route to St. Brown. We've done these things before. But it was more so finding the fact that, hey, Jalen Johnson isn't playing, right? Their number one cornerback right now is Tyreek Stevenson, and they're putting him on St. Brown. We love that matchup. On paper, that's a good matchup. We're just going to go right at that. Keep that simple. Just win, and we win. So they won the last drive. We win that time. You can see our players standing up there, and then that's when the game kind of, to me, ended, because the second half, you had the false start that put him behind the chains, and then they run it on first down, first 15 to get those 5 yards back. Now it's 2nd and 10. Then a 2-yard run, Branch shuts down, and then he blitz everybody, and it's a 5-yard pass. And now all of a sudden you can get off the field, right? You have them so far behind the chains they can't fake it. You're getting off the field. I don't even know if it was a completed pass. I think it was actually an incomplete pass, but they were so far behind the chains they couldn't do anything with that. So now you're carrying that 2-score lead. Offense makes the one play they have to make, which was, again, first down out of half. Play action. Goff throws an ugly pass, but he hits Jamo, who's wide open on the deep over route. And that set us up to go score. And Laporta has a key block. We have a lot of time. The next 2 plays weren't that pretty. Ratledge blows his assignment, Gibbs running backwards again for the second straight week. I don't love that, but it's because he stays on his feet, starts running backwards. We lose a whole bunch of yards. Goff scrambles. That scoot Goff coming back. He's back. And then we end up setting up the field goal, and that puts us up 3 scores. And that series, that sequence felt like kind of what put them in control and just kind of led them for the rest of the game, because ultimately the defense did it again by a sack by Davenport, 11-yard scramble, Tylee getting pressure on 4th down, tipping it, getting us off the field on 4th down. Like that tied along with the fact that then you hit Jamo on that 44-yard touchdown, which just, that was the end of the game. You're now up 24 points, and I can honestly leave it there. I'll leave it there. You hit the 44-yard post. I think it was a quarters look. I haven't watched it back, but I think it was, because you run the deep. I can't remember what they call this. There's typically a word for this. I think they call it because you run the in route and you run the post. I can't remember what they call it. There's like a word or term that people use for this, but it's basically when you get that look and you run an in route with a deep post on top of it, it's essentially it's not that it's not uncoverable. It's not coverable because we did it again. We actually ran the same exact look, I believe, against Washington in the playoffs, and the defender undercut it and picked it off in the end zone. But on paper, it was the right look, and you had him beat, and it was just that, like, oh, he made a great play. But typically, that's nearly impossible to cover because the safety has to step down on the inbreaker because if he doesn't, that's obviously wide open. So once he does that, because it's right in front of his face, now all of a sudden that cornerback's out leveraged. He gives up the inside leverage. Now you're asking a backside safety to run across and make a play. He's too slow for that. Plus, you have a backup cornerback trying to cover Jameson Williams and right. That's a problem. He just walked past him. And that deep safety is going to be too late to get over top against someone with that kind of speed. And that essentially ended the game, which again, give credit to John Morton because that's a 3rd and long. It was a 3-yard run, the negative 1-yard run. That'd have been what, 3rd and 8? And you have that beater, you're expecting that coverage, you run that beater for it. So John Morton was fantastic reading these notes back. Defensively, we were clutch 3 straight times. Offense picked up the defense. Special teams was way better. And ultimately, you got your run game going. You were much better on 3rd down as the game rolled along. It started bad, 2 third downs, give up a touchdown. Settled in. After that, much better on 3rd down, much better in those must-have-it downs defensively. And offensively, we were much better than we were last week as well. Red zone, we found a way to run the football, so that changed everything. And then after that, it was I don't even know how to explain it. It was just very complimentary. The word that they use, complimentary, that's what it was, complimentary football. So 52-21, beautiful. This will get everybody kind of back bought in as a Lions fan base if you weren't already. And it's exactly what they needed because they handled Caleb Williams running for the most part. He had like 20 yards. He broke one late. But that's what you need. And that's been the emphasis of Kelvin Shepard is like, hey, we're not letting quarterbacks take off on us this year. And you saw it in the preseason by the way they were rushing. And you heard Kelvin say it after the first game is like, we've struggled with that for years. That's not going to be a thing anymore. We're not going to do that. And then as Kelvin also says, you have to win your one-on-ones. And sometimes we just lost ours and that led to the touchdown drive. But ultimately, they won much more one-on-ones than they lost in this game. And keeping the quarterback in check, it's different with Lamar. He's a different breed with what they do in the run game. But what the Lions have shown to be a strength on paper, inside run defense, keeping the quarterback contained, those 2 things, they're going to need them against Baltimore. It's a perfect ramp up for that game. And there's really no way to be, I think, greatly prepared for how you deal with Baltimore. But I think Baltimore maybe poses the most similar threat in our division, clearly, when you have a guy like Caleb that throws the football. So for us, we're going to give ourselves a chance. We definitely got the offense rolling to what we need to give ourselves an opportunity. And clearly the explosives are more than there. And J-Mo was worth paying that money. And I'm going to leave it right there because the Lions are now 1-0. So we said a lot in a little bit of time. I appreciate y'all joining, and I will see you guys throughout the week over here on BR. So make sure you tune in as we do our segments each day. And I'll see you guys next week. Lions, Ravens is on the way. I'm out. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy the rest of football, and I'll see y'all then.